Hi everybody, I'm Ryan. Today we're going to talk about how to bluff in Magic the Gathering. Bluffing is a pretty high level thing, and I want to talk about like situations you should bluff, what bluffing is, some examples of really common bluffs that you can do that are pretty easy to pull off. Now what bluffing is purposefully misrepresenting your state of mind, which directly makes your opponent misread the situation. A huge part of Magic is trying to figure out what is in your opponent's hands, what they're planning on doing, what's going to happen next turn, and the best players are really good at figuring that out, which probably makes it feel like you're falling into their traps all the time. But also the best players are misrepresenting what they have going on to throw you off as you try to do it. Now, I have a little asterisk by this bluffing. Only bluff in Magic if the risk of failing is too small to matter, or you literally can't win a game unless this bluff works. A lot of players, me most of the time included actually, enjoy calling bluffs, and if I lose, I lose. I am definitely a make 'em have it player. But you can make your bluffs more believable and more likely that your opponent will respect a card by telling a consistent story. Do things in a way, especially over the course of a few turns, that it makes sense you have something in your hand. Don't tap the incorrect colored mana so you're not representing something that a normal person would be representing if they have that in their hand at a random turn after you've been bluffing it for 2 turns. That immediately tells your opponent that you're bluffing, and they won't respect it anymore. Now, there's a lot of ways that you can bluff. And we talked about like the situations you should be in when you bluff, what bluffing is and stuff like that. So let's talk about some really specific, easy ways that you can start bluffing your opponent at your FNM later this week. First way to bluff that is awesome is leaving mana up for a specific card, especially if it's exactly that mana and exactly those colors, and especially over the course of a few turns. I'll give you an example. If I'm playing Creativity in Modern and I leave a blue up every single turn, especially if I tap all the rest of my mana, but I make it a point to leave the blue up every single turn, I'm telling my opponent that I have Spell Pierce. Now, there's a reason to continue to leave this blue up even if I don't have Spell Pierce, because it forces my opponent to delay what they're doing or play in a way like I do have Spell Pierce, which can slow them down, force them to play different cards, and things like that. Well, I'm just maintaining my game plan, just using 1 mana to leave my Spell Pierce up. Now, sometimes they'll call your bluff, which is why it's important to still continue your game plan. Don't stop your game plan just to leave a blue up. Another kind of trickier thing that you can do is tap incorrectly, and then before you lay down the card you're casting, retap so that you're representing something. Specifically representing something that's really good in the situation or something that you want your opponent to play around that would be beneficial if they played around it. For example, in the same situation, I tap my colors, I leave a Sacred Foundry up, I go to play my spell, like say it's a Fable of the Mirror Breaker, and before I lay down Fable of the Mirror Breaker, untap a Steam Vents and tap a Sacred Foundry, and then play Fable of the Mirror Breaker. That makes my opponent think that I want to leave Spell Pierce up, but I almost forgot to leave the blue up, and that was a really close call. And it really sells the idea that you have a card in your hand that you want your opponent to play around. Again, these first 2 situations of like ways that you can bluff are way better over the course of a few turns, and become way more convincing over the course of a few turns. This next one is not so much. If you have nothing going on and you have air in your hand, holding your last card as a land just to bluff something and make them play around something and maybe think twice is something that a lot of players do, and is maybe one of the first and earliest bluffs that people pick up. Now, after a few turns or a few cards that your opponent plays to try to bait out a card in your hand, and then they realize it's just air or just a land, holding that land in your hand gets worse over the course of a few turns, but might save you some time or might make your opponent play in a suboptimal way by holding that land in your hand instead of playing it. Now, if there's a reason to play it, of course play it. But if there's literally no reason, maybe you hold on to the land. The last and maybe most famous bluff is the pen trick. The pen trick is when your opponent goes to attack, or your opponent goes to activate an ability, or maybe should activate an ability, especially when you're representing something, and especially when in conjunction with these other bluffs that I talked about, and this only works when you're about to lose life, is picking up your pen, like you're about to change life totals. Because if you do that, that sort of tells your opponent that you're looking to shortcut. That you're just going to like, okay, yeah, I take 2 when you attack with your 2-power creature. Okay, let's move on tap. However, picking up your pen doesn't literally say that you're going to shortcut this. So say you have a combat trick that you plan on using when you block, and your opponent is worried about that combat trick, and they go to attackers, and you pick up your pen and kind of wait for them, maybe they won't play around that combat trick, and they'll just attack because they know that you won't be able to block. And then you just put down your pen, block, pump. It's a super famous way to get people, and it works at the highest level. Famously, Patrick Chapin did it to Shahar Shenhar at the World Championships one year. But that is situations that you should be bluffing, how to bluff, some very famous and easy ways to bluff. If you want more videos like this, please let me know in the comments down below, and please like and subscribe. Check me out on social medias. Links are above me and in the description. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.